You don't expect to find Tinder on your boyfriend's phone the same way you don't expect to hear your name pronounced wrong after 3 years together. It's jarring not because it's catastrophic, but because it makes you look twice at something you thought you knew. He was in the kitchen, microwaving leftover pad thai and humming along to some old indie track on Spotify. I'd picked up his phone by reflex. He'd asked me to order more trash bags online. I wasn't snooping. I really wasn't. But as I opened the browser, I saw the little red flame logo at the top of his recently used apps. Tinder. Bold as ever. I stared at it. Just for a second too long. I remember blinking. Maybe I was misreading the icon. Or maybe I was misreading the moment. I tapped it. Again, not because I planned to. But because something in me couldn't not. It opened instantly. No login screen. No, you've been logged out. Just a profile. His profile. Picture of him holding a coffee mug and smiling sideways. The one I took on our trip to Asheville. Bio, tall enough to reach the top shelf, emotionally fluent in sarcasm. Let's match and trade memes, not trauma. I remember the sudden buzz in my ears. Like I'd been underwater for too long and just surfaced. He walked back into the room with the pad thai and a joke on his lips, something about the neighbor's cat climbing into our recycling bin, and I looked up, phone still in hand, and said the only thing I could manage. Why is Tinder open? He didn't freeze. He didn't grab the phone. He laughed. Actually laughed. Oh my god, seriously? It's just for the memes. That was the start of something I haven't figured out how to end. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He said it like I was the weird one for even asking. I stood there holding his phone like it was radioactive. You're on Tinder. But not like that. I swipe for fun sometimes. I don't talk to anyone. It's literally just for screenshots. People post the wildest stuff. You've seen the ones I send you. He smiled, like we were co-conspirators. This was a shared joke. Except the joke was lodged in my throat. That night, I lay awake while he slept soundly beside me. I stared at the ceiling, counting ceiling fan rotations and trying to tell the difference between what I felt and what I'd been taught I should feel. Is this cheating? Is this betrayal? Is this nothing? I'd asked him again before bed, more softly, more carefully, trying not to sound dramatic. Do you really only use it for memes? He'd rolled over and kissed my forehead. You worry too much. Oh, I love you, right? And just like that, the conversation was over. Except it wasn't. Not for me. It kept echoing, reverberating in all the corners I didn't know held echoes. I didn't tell anyone right away. I didn't want to be that person. The one who makes a big deal out of everything. The one who can't take a joke. The one who, heaven forbid, doesn't understand meme culture. But every time I opened Instagram and saw one of those screenshots he'd sent me, dating app bios full of red flags and chaotic one-liners, I wondered if he was still swiping. If he was still laughing. If I was the only one who wasn't in on it. 3 days later, I told my best friend Joe. We were walking laps around the reservoir, and I dropped it between sips of iced coffee. It was something casual. He's on Tinder. But he says it's just for memes. She stopped walking. Wait. What? I shrugged. She squinted. And, how do you feel about it? Which was the worst question because I didn't know. I felt embarrassed. I felt unsettled. I felt, and this was the hard part, I might be overreacting. I hated that part most of all. Joe pursed her lips. Look, I get using dating apps for content. But if I found Tinder on Marco's phone, I'd feel sick. Meme or not. That's not just, haha funny. That's a different kind of energy. I laughed nervously. That's what I thought. But he made me feel like I was being paranoid. She didn't respond right away. Then she said. The problem isn't the app. It's that he made you doubt your gut. That stuck with me the rest of the day. Not the Tinder part. The gut part. Because I spent a long time training myself not to speak up when something feels off. And longer learning how to not make other people uncomfortable. So I did what I always do. I minimized. I deflected. I told myself he wasn't cheating. That he wasn't looking. That it didn't count if nothing happened. But that night, as he reached for me under the covers, I flinched. Just slightly. Just enough. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did. but neither of us said anything. And in the silence, something subtle but sharp began to grow. Jo didn't let it go. She never does, really. That's part of her charm, or her curse, depending on how fragile I'm feeling. She texted me 2 days after our walk around the reservoir. "So, you ever talk to him again about Tinder?" I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Typed "not yet," then deleted it. Typed "trying to pick my moment," then deleted that too. Eventually I just replied, "No. But I will." A lie, technically. I wasn't planning on bringing it up again. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding like I'd been stewing. Which I had. And nobody likes the sound of simmering resentment reheated into a conversation. Besides, he'd already given me his answer. It's just memes. Any attempt to revisit the topic would come off like I didn't trust him. Like I was still chewing on something he'd told me to swallow. Still, I couldn't shake it. Every time he pulled out his phone, my eyes flicked to the screen before I even meant to look. Not to check what he was doing, I didn't want to be that person, but just, involuntarily, flinching when someone raises their hand, even if it's only to scratch their head. And he noticed. He didn't say anything for a while. But one night, a Thursday, I think he was scrolling next to me on the couch and said, without looking up, "You're doing that thing again." I paused mid-spoonful of ice cream. "That thing where you check my screen, you think I'm sexting someone under the blanket." I tried to laugh. I did. But it came out brittle. "That's not what I'm doing." He set the phone down. "You still mad about Tinder?" I hesitated. Not mad. Just, not over it, I guess. He groaned, a sound not of guilt, but of exasperation. "Babe, seriously. I told you. It's just memes." I swiped for a laugh. "I send you the funny ones. You've laughed at them. You literally sent one to Jo once." "That's not the point." He blinked. "Then what is?" I struggled for words, as if emotional discomfort had tied knots in my tongue. "It's not the app. It's the secrecy. And how easily you dismissed it. How quick you were to make it seem like I was being dramatic for asking." He sighed, leaned back. "So now I'm gaslighting you?" "That's not what I said." "You didn't have to. You're implying I'm manipulative just because you're insecure." That hit like a flick to the chest, small, but sharp. I pulled my legs under me on the couch, needing distance, even if it was just physical. This isn't about labels or memes. It's about how I feel when something unsettles me, and instead of holding space for that, you joke. You roll your eyes. You make it seem like I'm less rational just because I felt something. He didn't say anything, so I kept going, softly. "You say it's just for the memes. But memes are communication. They tell people what you value, how you think. They're not neutral. Especially on a dating app." Still nothing. Then finally, "You're taking this way too seriously." That phrase, like a light switch flipped in the wrong direction. It reminded me of my mother. Of how she used to say the same thing whenever I cried too long after an argument, or worried out loud about something that made her uncomfortable. It reminded me of learning, very early, that being too serious made me harder to love. I didn't say any of that. I just stood up and took the ice cream bowl to the sink. We didn't talk for the rest of the night. He didn't follow me to the bedroom. Slept on the couch because it was cooler. I didn't ask him to come in. The next morning, I left early for work. There was a post-it on the bathroom mirror. "Sorry if I made you feel dismissed. Wasn't my intention. I love you." It was fine. Technically the right words. But it read like someone checking the apology box, not someone who understood the shape of what had been broken. I didn't respond. And he didn't bring it up again. Which, somehow, felt worse. That weekend, we had dinner with my sister and her husband. They're the kind of couple who hold hands under the table. Who say honey and babe without irony. It's easy to envy them, even if you suspect the edges aren't quite as smooth as they look. Still, there was a moment somewhere between appetizers and dessert where my sister said, "I deleted all my social apps last year. Too much noise. Too many people pretending they're not looking while definitely looking." Her husband chuckled. Smartest thing she ever did. Less scrolling, more sleeping next to me. Everyone laughed. Except me. Because suddenly I wondered what it would feel like to be loved loudly like that. To have someone make a joke that left no one in doubt about where you stood. Not even you. Later, in the car, he said, "Your sister's a lot." I shrugged. "She's honest." He snorted. "Or just overbearing." I wanted to say, "Or maybe you're underbearing," but I didn't. Because that kind of comment turns the conversation into a fight. And we don't fight. That's one of our things. Except I've started to realize that not fighting isn't the same as understanding each other. Sometimes it's just another form of silence. When we got home, he went straight to the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and scrolled through my texts with Joe. The last thing she'd sent was a meme. A dating meme. One I'd laughed at when he'd first shown me. But now it made my stomach twist a little. Because I didn't know anymore if I was laughing with him or at myself. I used to think therapy was something you did after the crisis. Like a cleanup crew you call after a storm hits. You assess the damage, make a few notes, and eventually say, "I'm fine," enough times that someone believes you, maybe even you. But lately, therapy feels more like standing in the middle of the storm and letting someone hold an umbrella over your head while you decide if you even want to stay in this field anymore. My therapist, Nora, has this quiet way of asking questions that feel like opening a drawer you forgot was there. This week, she said. When he said, "You're taking this too seriously," what did that bring up for you? I tried to laugh. Deflect. Say something sarcastic about meme culture. But she waited. I looked down at my hands and said, "I think it reminded me of being 12 and crying because my dad didn't come home on my birthday. And my mom said, 'Well, that's just how he is. You'll toughen up.'" Nora nodded, slowly. "So when your boyfriend dismisses something that hurt you, it's not just about the dating app." No. It's about learning, early on, that needing things, consistency, presence, honesty, makes you harder to love. After that session, I walked home instead of taking the train. It was raining, not heavy, just enough to make the sidewalks slick and quiet. I let the drizzle soak into my sweater and told myself it was cleansing. I could rinse off old expectations, unspoken resentments, tiny betrayals I'd convinced myself were just part of it. But when I got home and found him sprawled on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling with a smirk on his face, something in me hesitated at the door. Not fear, just distance. Like I was watching a scene from outside the frame. He looked up and smiled. "Hey you. Want to see this one? It's so unhinged." He turned the screen toward me. A Tinder bio. Something about alpha males and if you're not 6 feet 2 inches, don't even bother. I forced a laugh. It wasn't about the app anymore. Not really. It was about realizing I didn't feel safe enough to say, "I don't want to see this." Because I knew what he'd say, "It's funny," or "Relax, it's not about you," or worse, "God, you're so sensitive lately." So I laughed. And that felt worse than saying nothing at all. That night, in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan again. It made this faint, ticking noise like a clock with no numbers, just a quiet reminder that time keeps moving, even if you don't. I thought about how I used to feel around him. Safe. Warm. Like someone had finally said, "You don't have to carry all of it." Now I felt like I was holding our entire emotional infrastructure together with duct tape made of patience and lowercase ok's. Joe called the next morning. I told her I was fine. She didn't believe me. She said, "You know you're allowed to want clarity, right? It's not about clarity." I get it. He's not cheating. Then what is it about? I sighed. It's about laughing at the same joke and slowly realizing you're the punchline. She was quiet for a beat, then said, "If someone makes you feel small, even with a smile, that's not love. That's a performance." I didn't answer. Because part of me wanted to defend him. And part of me wanted to ask, what if I'm the one performing? What if I've learned to tolerate discomfort so well that I can't tell the difference between love and survival? That evening, I brought up therapy. Just gently. I said, "Nora and I talked about that night. The Tinder thing." He groaned again. I'd mentioned the weather and traffic in the same breath. "Babe. That's ancient history. It's not. For me. Are you just looking for a reason to be upset?" I flinched. That's a sentence I've heard before. From my father. From an ex. From the part of me that thinks if I just shut up and smile, things will be easier. I looked at him. Really looked. and realized I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound like a request. And I was tired of requesting basic things like acknowledgement. So I said nothing. Just went to the kitchen, washed a cup I hadn't used, and sat at the table with it. Empty. He didn't follow me. Didn't apologize. He texted me later from the bedroom. "You coming to bed?" I replied, "Not yet." He didn't answer. The next morning, he made me coffee. Put it in my favorite mug, sat it on the counter like an offering, didn't say anything. I took the cup, sipped it, said, "Thanks." But what I meant was, this doesn't fix it. But I'll hold it anyway. That day, Nora asked me, what would it mean to need more? I stared at her. Not because I didn't understand, but because I did. Needing more means risking rejection, means being too much. Means saying, this isn't enough, and waiting to see if someone tries harder or walks away. I told her. I learned to need less before I even knew what needing meant. She nodded, didn't rush to respond, just let that hang there, gently. Like it deserved air. When I got home, he was on the couch again. Same position, same smirk. He looked up and said, "You okay?" I said, "I'm thinking about what it means to ask for more." He tilted his head. "More what?" I paused, then said, "More respect, more presence, less irony, more actual care." He blinked, not in anger, just in confusion, like I'd spoken another language. And maybe I had. Maybe emotional fluency isn't universal. Maybe we've just been translating each other wrong for months, smiling across a language neither of us really knows. It happened at Emma and Jordan's dinner party. One of those softlit, curated evenings full of wine glasses, charcuterie boards, and playlists made to seem effortless. The kind of social event where everyone's hair looks like it just dried perfectly on its own and nobody spills the red wine even when laughing. He and I were seated across from each other. There were 8 of us in total, 4 couples. Everyone smiling in that practiced, polished way, the kind that says, "I'm fine, you're fine, this night is fine," even if something in your chest doesn't quite believe it. We were on our second bottle of wine when the conversation turned to therapy. Not in a deep way. More like, can we all admit now that everyone's either in therapy or should be? Someone laughed and said, "If you haven't cried in a therapist's office this year, you're probably just bottling it until Thanksgiving." I chuckled. And then, without warning, he jumped in. "Oh, she's the crier in the relationship. Big feelings every day of the week." Everyone laughed. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. Just an easy, casual laugh, the kind that makes you feel like you're watching yourself from the other side of the room. I smiled, reflexively. But inside, something wilted. It wasn't the joke itself. It was the way he said it. My feelings were quirky. My sensitivity was a thing to manage, not understand. I know he didn't mean harm. But the way his hand found my thigh after the laugh, a squeeze, a "you know I'm just kidding" touch, made me feel like I was being thanked for playing along with my own belittling. I stayed quiet. I always do. I've gotten good at letting it pass, especially in public, because calling it out would make things uncomfortable. Would make me the one disrupting the evening. So I let it go. Again. When we got home that night, he asked if I had fun. I said I was tired. He said I'd been quiet on the way home. I said the wine made me sleepy. He kissed my forehead and said, "Good night, feelings girl," with a grin. And something in me folded. Not snapped. Not screamed. Just quietly folded in on itself like paper crumpling under weight. The next morning, Joe and I got coffee. I told her what happened. She winced before I even finished. Ugh. He actually said that? It was a joke. You always say that. I stirred my coffee, not looking up. I don't want to be the person who can't take a joke. Babe. That's not a joke. That's a public undercut wrapped in a punchline. Maybe I'm being oversensitive. Joe leaned forward. Or maybe you're being underdefended. Even by yourself. I didn't respond. But her words stayed with me like static cling. I walked home with this buzzing in my chest that felt like memory and warning combined. I kept thinking about that laugh around the dinner table. How everyone else smiled. How nobody blinked. And how I smiled too, because the alternative would have been explaining why it hurt. And I don't think I even had the language for that yet. That night, I brought it up. Quietly, measured. Not because I was calm, but because I knew that if my voice trembled even slightly, he'd accuse me of making a big deal again. I didn't love what you said at Emma's. He looked up from his phone. What did I say? The feelings girl joke. The thing about me crying all the time. He rolled his eyes. It was a joke. Everyone laughed. I didn't. He blinked. You seemed fine. Because I didn't want to ruin the vibe. But it made me feel small. He groaned. You always do this. Take something light and make it heavy. Because it is heavy to me. You could have just said something right then. In front of 6 people? Would have been better than stewing. I paused, looked down at my lap, then said, sometimes I feel like the only way you know how to talk about me is by teasing me. He didn't respond right away, just looked at me with this mix of confusion and defensiveness that I've seen a dozen times before. Then he said, I don't get why you're acting like I don't care about you. And that's when I realized something kind of awful. I didn't think he didn't care. I thought he didn't understand what caring really meant to me. Because to him, love is teasing and proximity and shared jokes and default loyalty. But to me, love is attention. Not the performative kind, but the kind where someone sees you flinch at something they said and doesn't wait 3 days for you to bring it up. The kind where they don't laugh with others at a version of you that you're still learning how to hold. I told him I needed some air. Walked around the block twice. Watched couples in restaurant windows laughing, leaning into each other. Wondered if any of them were laughing at someone they claimed to love. When I came home, he'd made dinner. Spaghetti with store-bought sauce. He said, I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I was trying to be funny. I nodded. We ate in silence. The sauce was fine. But it didn't sit right. Not in my stomach. Not in my heart. That night, I journaled something I didn't want to admit. I don't think I want to laugh at myself this much anymore. Especially not when the people laughing louder than me are the ones I let in the closest. I hadn't seen my brother in almost 3 months. Not for any dramatic reason. Just life. Schedules. Avoidance disguised as busyness. He texted on a Thursday afternoon. Coffee this weekend? I owe you a pastry and a guilt trip. I said yes because I missed him. And because lately, I'd been craving someone who knew me from before. Before this relationship. Before meme culture became a coping mechanism. Before I had to decode whether I was asking for too much or just finally asking for something at all. We met at the cafe near our old high school. The one that still plays Bon Iver like it's a newly discovered secret. He hugged me with one arm, phone in the other. That's always been his way. Half in, half somewhere else. He ordered a matcha. I raised an eyebrow. When did you become that guy? He smirked. Since I realized coffee makes my anxiety sing Taylor Swift at 3 a.m. Fair. We found a corner table. Small talk came first. Work, mom's latest group chat meltdown, my niece's obsession with stickers. Then he leaned back and studied me the way only someone who's seen you ugly cry over a broken art project in 5th grade can. You good? I shrugged. Define good. He didn't push. Just let the question hang. Eventually, I said. I caught him on a dating app a few weeks ago. His eyebrows rose. Seriously? He said it was just for the memes. Pause. Then he said. That sounds like a guy excuse. I laughed, but it came out jagged. He made me feel crazy for even asking. And you stayed? Yeah. He didn't look surprised. Just quiet. You've always been good at rationalizing someone else's behavior before looking at your own hurt. I blinked. That's rich, coming from you. He smiled sheepishly. Touché. We're cut from the same cloth. Emotional containment squad. We both laughed, but there was a lump in it. He tapped his cup. You remember when Dad left? You were what, 13? 14? Right. You cried for 3 straight days. I didn't cry at all. I remember. You know what Mom said to me? I shook my head. She said, "You're so strong. I don't have to worry about you." He looked down. And I think I decided right then that strength meant not needing anything, not showing it. Just absorbing it quietly. I didn't say anything, because I remembered what she said to me that same week. You need to stop making this so emotional. He didn't die. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, maybe that's why we both ended up with people who confuse easygoing with emotionally unavailable. I gave him a half smile. You too? Yup. Emily broke up with me 2 months ago. My eyes widened. What? Didn't you say anything? Didn't want to make a thing of it? I raised my eyebrows. Wow. That's extremely on brand. He laughed. Yeah, well. It turns out, not talking about things doesn't make them disappear. It just makes them echo louder when the room gets quiet. We left the cafe with the kind of ache that doesn't sting, just pulses, familiar and shared. He hugged me tighter this time. You deserve to be with someone who listens the first time. Who doesn't make you translate? I nodded. But part of me still wasn't sure that person existed, or, if he did, whether I'd even recognize him as love. Because for so long, love had looked like guessing. Like swallowing hard and smiling anyway. That night, my boyfriend was in the kitchen, making pasta. He didn't notice when I came in. Just said, "Can you grab the Parmesan?" I handed it to him. He smiled. You okay? I hesitated, then said, I saw my brother today. He told me about his breakup. Bummer. What happened? His girlfriend said she felt like she had to guess his feelings all the time. That he was emotionally passive. He paused. Sounds familiar. I looked at him. He meant it about my brother, not himself, and I realized in that moment that we weren't just speaking different languages, we were in different libraries. We ate in near silence. After dinner, he turned on a show we both liked. I sat beside him. Not touching. Halfway through, he looked over and said, You've been distant lately. I nodded. Yeah. Is this still about the Tinder thing? I took a breath, then said, It's about me realizing how often I've let myself feel small just to keep the peace. He stared at me like I'd said something in Morse code. I continued, gently. I don't think you mean to make me feel that way. But I don't think you don't, either. He looked away. So what, now I'm the villain? No. That's the problem. There's no villain, just a disconnect. He sighed, then say what you want. I looked at him. Really looked. And realized I didn't know anymore. So I said, I want to feel like I'm not the only one in the relationship translating emotions into acceptable doses. He nodded, didn't speak. The episode kept playing. Neither of us laughed. Later that night, I got into bed first. He joined me 20 minutes later. Didn't say goodnight. Just laid down, facing away. And in the darkness, I whispered, I'm scared I'm losing myself trying not to lose you. He didn't answer. I don't think he was asleep. I think he just didn't know what to say. Or maybe he thought silence was safer than trying and getting it wrong. But silence isn't safety. It's surrender in slow motion. My birthday was coming up. Not a big one. No zeros or fives. Just one of those awkward, in-between ages where you're technically fine but starting to feel like time is stacking behind your eyes. I hadn't made any plans, mostly because I was afraid to see what would happen if I didn't. A small part of me, the part that still believes in hope as a quiet habit, wondered if he'd surprise me. Not with a party, or a trip, or anything dramatic. Just thoughtfulness. An early morning coffee run with my favorite donut. A card he actually wrote in. An acknowledgement of the emotional weather I'd been navigating while still showing up every day like I wasn't drenched. But when I brought it up casually, 2 days before, he said, Oh right. I was thinking we could just chill. Order in, maybe? Netflix and snacks? I nodded. And swallowed that tiny thread of sadness before it reached my throat. Sure. That sounds good. What I wanted to say was, I'm not asking for grand gestures. I'm asking to be seen. But the timing felt wrong. It always did. The day came. He slept in. I made my own coffee. He forgot to say happy birthday until noon, said it with a kiss on the cheek while brushing past me in the hallway. No gift. Not even a card. At 6 p.m., he ordered Thai, my second favorite. Not my first. Not the dish I always get. The one he forgets I love. We watched an action movie, something he picked. I didn't argue. Halfway through, he turned to me and said, "You're quiet. You okay?" I smiled. Because that's what I do. Yeah. Just tired. Joe called the next day. I didn't tell her everything, just enough for her to guess the rest. She was quiet for a second, then said, "You remember when you dated Ben?" I laughed. Wow. Deep cut. He forgot your birthday too. Remember what you said? I didn't. So she reminded me. It's not that he didn't buy a gift. It's that I didn't feel held. And yeah. That was it. Still is. A birthday isn't about presents. It's a barometer. Of attention. Of care. Of whether someone's learned your internal map and still wants to walk it with you. This year, I felt like I was whispering my needs into a canyon and calling the echo love. Later that week, I found the Tinder app again. Still on his phone. Still open. I stared at it for longer this time. Not because I wanted to confront him again. But because I finally understood something. It wasn't about Tinder. Not really. It was about how easily I'd made space for his behavior. How much I'd minimized to keep the shape of something that was already fading. I didn't tell him I saw it. I didn't rage. I just closed the app, set the phone down, and went for a walk. It was cold outside. Crisp. The kind of air that makes your thoughts feel sharper than they should. I walked to the bookstore on Main, wandered the aisles without buying anything, and somewhere between the poetry and the self-help, I realized I didn't want a breakup. I wanted a breakthrough. But I was starting to see I might have to choose. When I got home, he was on the couch again, scrolling, laughing to himself. He looked up and said, "Where'd you go?" "Out." "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." He studied me for a moment. Then went back to his phone. That night, I lay in bed and asked myself, if I stopped performing the role of cool girlfriend who laughs it off, would there still be a relationship underneath? I didn't know. And that scared me more than anything. 2 days later, he brought home flowers. Not roses. Not anything with significance. Just a plastic-wrapped bunch from the grocery store. "I felt bad about your birthday," he said. I nodded. "Thanks." He seemed proud. Like he'd done something grand. And I hated that I was grateful. That the bar was so low I could trip over it in my sleep. Nora, my therapist, asked, "What would it look like to stop hoping he changes, and start asking yourself what you truly need?" I didn't answer. Just cried. The kind of quiet, exhausted crying you do when your heart is tired of translating itself into softer languages. She waited, then said, "Sometimes, the loneliest place isn't being alone. It's being invisible in a relationship." I walked home slowly after that session, stopped at the cafe again, saw my reflection in the glass and barely recognized the woman looking back. She was tired. But not broken. And I decided, right then, that maybe the real gift I needed wasn't from him. Maybe it was permission, from myself, to stop explaining my feelings like a lawyer. To let them exist without defense. When I got home, he was watching another show. Didn't look up. I sat beside him. Not touching. Not smiling. Just there. Present, but not pleading. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of the question I'd been avoiding. What if staying is just another way of disappearing? I ran into Maya at the farmer's market on a Sunday morning. She used to be my roommate in college, the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday and carried extra band-aids just in case. We lost touch after graduation, life, time, different cities, but seeing her again felt like bumping into an old version of myself I hadn't realized I missed. She looked exactly the same. Wild hair, gentle smile, always slightly sunburned no matter the season. She was with someone tall, kind-eyed, carrying both their coffees in one hand while he held hers in the other. No fuss. No performance. Just easy. They both beamed when they saw me. "You haven't changed at all," she said. I wanted to say, I have, and I'm not sure I like it. But instead I said, you either. We chatted, caught up. She told me about their move, their dog, the non-profit she just started working at. He mostly listened, occasionally adding a detail, but his hand never left hers, not once. They invited me to sit with them under one of the big maple trees. I did. And for 20 minutes, I watched something I didn't know I was starving for. Simple presence, tension that didn't require effort. A rhythm between two people that didn't involve apologies or decoding. They finished each other's sentences, not in the cheesy, sitcom way. In the we listen so long we start predicting each other way. And then something small happened. Maya spilled her drink, just a little, and muttered, "Oh, God, I'm a mess." He looked at her and said, "You're my favorite kind of mess." No sarcasm. No wink. Just love. Plain, soft, uncomplicated. I don't know why, but I nearly cried. Later, I told Jo about it over voice note. She texted back in seconds. That's what safety looks like. You're not crazy for craving it. Then, sometimes we don't know we're hungry until someone feeds us. That night, my boyfriend noticed I was quiet again. You okay? I nodded. Then said, truthfully, I saw Maya today. With her partner. Cool. They seemed good. He didn't look up from his phone. Good for them. And maybe that's when I knew. Not that I was leaving. Not yet. But that I'd begun to imagine something else. Not someone else. Just a different way of being loved. The next morning, I found a note on the fridge. Sorry I've been off lately. Let's do something this weekend? Just us. It wasn't much. But it made me pause. Because for once, he initiated something. I texted back. Okay. Can we actually talk a little too? No reply. Just a thumbs up emoji. We went to the park on Saturday. Walked the trail we used to love. For a while, it felt almost like old times. He made me laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks. Something dumb about squirrels having turf wars over a granola bar. He looked at me and said, "See? I do still make you laugh." I smiled. Yeah. You do. Then, gently. But that's not the only thing I need. He stiffened a little. Here we go. It's not an ambush. It's just a conversation. He kicked at some leaves. Okay, say what you need to say. So I did. Softly. When you make jokes about my feelings, I don't feel loved. When I bring things up and you roll your eyes, I feel like I'm auditioning for the right to be heard. And when you're on a dating app, even for memes, I feel replaceable. He didn't interrupt. Didn't defend. Didn't say anything, so I kept going. I need more than silence after I speak. I need you to want to understand me, not just get through the conversation. He sighed. I don't always know what to say. That's okay. But not saying anything isn't the same as being gentle. It's just being absent. He nodded. Barely, then said, I guess I didn't realize it felt that bad for you. And I believe that. Which is part of the problem. On the way home, we didn't talk much. He held my hand for the first time in a while. And I let him. Because I'm still here. Still hoping. Still choosing, for now. But a quiet truth is forming inside me, like a photograph in a darkroom. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for honest effort. And that might be the one thing I can't manufacture alone. That night, I reread some old journal entries. One from our first few months together said, He's so easy to be around. I don't feel like I have to be anyone else. And now I feel like I've become a version of myself that bends before it breaks. I called my brother. Told him I was thinking about that old night when Dad left. He said, You were the first one to cry. I was jealous of that. Why? Because you still believed your pain mattered. I didn't know what to say. So I said, Maybe it's time to believe it again. We had dinner with friends again. Different group this time, more casual, more chaotic. The kind of people who wear mismatched socks on purpose and talk over each other with wine-stained smiles. I hadn't wanted to go. But he'd insisted. Come on, babe. You've been so in your head lately. This'll be fun. And I think part of me said yes just to test it. To see what fun felt like anymore. To see if maybe, in the right lighting and with enough laughter, I could believe we were still okay. We brought a bottle of wine we couldn't afford. He joked the whole way there about how we'd pretend to be high-functioning adults with compost bins and a shared Google Calendar. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was silence. The night was warm. String lights in the backyard, barefoot conversations, someone grilling corn and dropping half of it into the grass. We sat side by side on a weathered bench. He rested his hand on my thigh, absent-mindedly. Talked about work. Fantasy football. How he almost got rear-ended last week. I nodded, smiled, passed bowls of salad like a competent person. Then Emma, not the same Emma as before, a different one, from my old job, said, "You two always seem so together. Like, balanced." I blinked. He grinned. "We're a well-oiled machine, right, babe?" Everyone laughed. I did too. But something in me recoiled. Not at the words. At how easily they came out of him. How confident he was in the performance. How I used to find it charming. Now I just found it off. We got home late. He flopped onto the bed without undressing. I stared at the ceiling fan again, always the ceiling fan, like a metronome ticking off moments I can't take back. And I thought about what Emma said. You two always seem so together. And how much work I'd done to make it seem that way. How many quiet swallowings. How many tight-lipped smiles. How many internal edits to turn this hurts into never mind. The next morning, I woke early and wrote in my journal. Maybe the worst part of being unseen is realizing how well you've trained yourself to hide. That afternoon, I found myself rereading old texts from our first year. Back when we sent each other playlists and inside jokes, there was a message from him that said, "I love how you feel things so deeply. It makes me feel safe." And all I could think was, what changed? Did I feel more deeply? Or did he just stop listening? That night, we had dinner at home. He brought it up out of nowhere. "You've been quiet lately." Again. I nodded. "Just tired." He looked at me. "You sure that's all?" I hesitated, then said, "I've been thinking about what Emma said." He frowned. "Emma?" "At dinner. When she said we seemed really balanced." "Right. That was nice." "Yeah. Except I don't think we are." He blinked. "Where's this coming from?" "I think we look fine." "But we're not." "So we're faking it now?" "No. I am." He leaned back. "You're being dramatic again." And there it was. That word again. Like a gavel. Dramatic. Too much. Overreacting. I took a deep breath. "Please stop saying what?" "That I'm dramatic. It makes me feel like my feelings are inconvenient." He paused. "Okay. Sorry." But he said it flatly. Without understanding. Like he was closing a tab on his computer. Not holding a moment. We ate in silence. He offered me his spring roll. I declined. He shrugged. Turned the TV on. And I realized something strange. I didn't want to fight anymore. But not because I'd made peace. Because I was tired of trying to convince someone that I was worth taking seriously. Later, I called Jo. Told her about the dinner. About Emma's comment. She said, "You know that saying? Don't compare your inside to someone else's outside? Maybe it's time you stop comparing your own outside to your inside." I don't know who I am on the outside anymore. Then maybe it's time to align them. That night, I looked at him sleeping. Peaceful. Unaware. And I felt this soft sadness creep in, not because I didn't love him, but because I knew he hadn't asked himself once if I was still happy. Not really. He assumed we were okay because I hadn't packed a bag. But sometimes the bag is invisible. Sometimes it's just a slowly folding version of yourself. I wrote a list in my notes app. Things I want in a relationship. To be listened to without a joke waiting at the end. To be remembered on days that matter. To be held when I can't articulate the sadness. To laugh with, not at. To bring things up without bracing for dismissal. To feel like someone chooses me daily, not by default. To not wonder if I'm too much, just because I feel deeply. When I finished writing, I stared at the list. Then asked myself the hardest question. How many of these do I have right now? I didn't need a therapist to tell me what that answer meant. But I knew I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Because endings need time. Not for drama. For grieving. And I was just beginning to understand what I'd been losing all along. I wish I could say things settled after that dinner. That Maya and I found some clarity, or even closure. But the truth is, the days afterward felt more like wading through fog. You know something's out there, waiting to hit you, but you can't see it yet. You just keep walking, hoping it doesn't hurt too much when it does. We didn't talk about the dinner with Danny. Not directly. Not about how she disappeared for half the night or what it meant that Maya came back from that room with red eyes and a quiet that stayed stitched to her for days. She smiled, she laughed, she even made breakfast the next morning. But I could feel her slipping, like her presence had a soft border now, something I wasn't allowed to cross. I kept trying to tell myself that maybe this was normal. Maybe couples go through seasons like this, dry spells of understanding, silence where there used to be closeness. But when I saw her journaling on the balcony again, legs curled under her, face turned toward the sun like she was praying for something I couldn't offer, I realized I wasn't sure we were in the same season anymore. Maybe we weren't even in the same story. Then came the envelope. It was a plain white square, no return address. I almost tossed it with the junk mail, but her name was written on it in sharp, tight lettering, almost angry in its precision. Maya wasn't home. I placed it on the entryway table and didn't think about it again until I saw her holding it later, standing in the kitchen barefoot, still in her morning robe. You opened it? I asked, surprised. She nodded. It's from a friend I haven't talked to in a long time. What kind of friend? She paused for just a beat too long. Someone from the retreat I went to last year. The one she did without telling me until the night before she left. A week in the desert, all vegan food and no cell phones. I remembered how she came back glowing and distant. That was the first time I felt like I didn't know how to reach her anymore. What did they say? I asked. She folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer without answering. That's when I realized we were officially keeping things from each other now. And not in the innocent, I ate the last cookie way. In the I don't know if you'd understand way. The kind that breaks things in quiet ways. The rent was due again the next week. For once, she brought it up before I did. I can cover a third this time, she said, avoiding my eyes. Sold a couple paintings. Not a lot, but it helps. I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to smile. But all I could do was nod. Because something in me was tired of scraping gratitude from things that used to be standard. That night, while she was in the shower, I stared at the blank note app on my phone, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to write her something, not a breakup text, not an accusation. Just honesty. A soft kind. The kind you can edit before sending. The kind that makes you feel like maybe you'll be heard better if your voice isn't shaking. But I couldn't even begin. What do you say when you love someone who makes you feel like a guest in your own home? Instead, I typed something else. Something simple. Are we still okay? I didn't send it. I deleted it. Because I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The next morning, she woke me up with coffee and a quiet kiss on the forehead. You're working too much, she said. You're floating too much, I replied. She smiled like I'd made a joke. I hadn't. Later that day, while she was out visiting a gallery friend, Danny texted me. Danny, hey, can I ask you something kind of awkward? Me, always. Danny, do you think Maya's being fair to you? I stared at the message for a long time. Me, why? Danny, because I love her, and I want to support her. But I also see how exhausted you look lately. And I guess I just wonder if she sees it too. That was the first time I cried about it. Not a big cry. Not a dramatic breakdown. Just a quiet, breathless, shoulder-shaking kind of cry, the kind that happens when someone names something you've been too afraid to say out loud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Maya breathed softly beside me. And I kept thinking, is love supposed to be this one-sided sometimes? Or have I just convinced myself it's noble to wait for someone who's not really here? The next morning, she asked if I wanted to go on a walk with her. Where to? Nowhere. Just a loop around the neighborhood. I miss walking with you. So we walked. Past the same houses, the same dogs, the same mailbox shaped like a dolphin that we always laughed at. But we didn't laugh this time. I'd been thinking about moving out for a while, she said. It was so sudden, I thought I'd misheard. Moving out? I repeated. Not forever, she added quickly. Just. I think I need space. Real space. Not the kind where I disappear into yoga studios and you pretend it's normal. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Is this your way of breaking up with me? No, she said. It's my way of trying to avoid that. I didn't respond. We just kept walking. The houses blurred together. The sun felt too bright. Back home, she started packing some things into a duffel bag. Sweaters, notebooks, incense, her favorite mug. I'm not abandoning you, she said. I just need to know who I am when I'm not trying to live up to something I don't believe in anymore. Which is what? I asked, my voice smaller than I meant it to be. She paused. Perfection. Predictability. The version of us everyone thought was ideal. I nodded. Because even if I didn't agree, I understood. Before she left, she kissed my cheek. Not on the lips. Just the cheek. Don't wait for me, she said. But don't give up on me either. And just like that, she was gone again. And I was alone again. Except this time, it didn't feel like a break. It felt like the beginning of something ending. Maya was gone for 4 days. Just 4. And yet, it was enough time for me to forget what it felt like to hear her humming while she made tea, to see her walking barefoot from room to room like each corner of our apartment owed her something. I hadn't realized how much space she filled until she wasn't there. And now that she was back, it was like someone had cut a hole in the shape of her, then tried to glue her back into it. It didn't fit. Not quite. She didn't unpack. Just slid her duffel into the corner of the bedroom like she wasn't sure how long she'd stay. She still slept beside me, but her back faced mine. Still smiled, but only with half her face. Still said I love you, but it sounded like an echo of an older version of herself, one that used to sound like home. We didn't talk about her leaving. We talked about groceries. About the neighbors fighting again. About how the faucet had started to drip and how I should really fix that. But not about the fact that her absence had cracked something inside me I hadn't known was already splintered. One night, I dreamt I was searching for her in a forest. Every tree looked like her. Same long limbs, same knotted heart. I kept calling out, but none of them answered. When I woke up, my chest ached. She was already awake, sitting on the balcony with her journal. I stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching. She looked up, gave me a tired smile. Morning. Dreamt of you, I said. Oh? You were trees, she raised an eyebrow. Should I be flattered? I think you were hiding. She didn't respond, just turned back to her page and kept writing. Later that week, Danny texted me again. Danny, I think she's scared to come back fully. Not because of you. Because of herself. Me, she says she wants to be here. Danny, wanting and being are not the same. I stared at that for a long time. Then wrote and deleted about 5 different replies. In the end, I just sent a thumbs up emoji. Because I didn't have words that didn't feel like accusations, and maybe that was part of the problem. I didn't want to be the guy who dragged her back. I wanted her to want to stay. Fully. But I was starting to wonder if she ever would. We went to a friend's art show that Friday, someone Maya used to work with before she left the agency. Someone who still wore high-waisted trousers and red lipstick like armor. The kind of person who said darling without irony. Maya was radiant at the gallery. Laughing too loud. Hugging people with both arms. Drinking wine like water. She looked like someone who belonged in that world, all soft edges and sharp opinions. I watched her from across the room, talking to a group of strangers, and I realized something that hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't part of that version of her. Not really. When she caught me watching, she smiled. A real one. But when she came back to me, arm looped through mine, she said, "You look tired." I was. But not in the way she meant. That night, she painted. I watched TV on mute. At some point, she asked me if I still found her beautiful. I turned to her, startled. Of course, I said. Even now, she asked, not meeting my eyes. What's now? She gestured vaguely. This version of me. The one that forgets to buy milk. That doesn't split rent. That disappears for 4 days. I find you complicated, I said. But yes. Still beautiful. She nodded slowly, like she didn't believe me but appreciated the effort. Then she said something that made me sit up straighter. I think I might apply for a residency. In the city? No. Upstate. 3 months. I felt my stomach drop. 3 months? It'd be good for me. What about us? She bit her lip. That's the part one haven't figured out. That night, we didn't sleep next to each other. Not because we fought, but because she said she wanted to try sleeping in her own energy. Whatever that meant. So I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling fan again. Tick. 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 The metronome of uncertainty. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. It was Danny. She looked nervous. Not her usual sarcastic self. I need to talk to you, she said. Maya was in the shower. I let her in. We sat on the couch. I think she's going to leave, Danny said. I figured. She told me last night. She's scared to tell you. I closed my eyes. Why are you telling me? Because I don't think she's doing it out of cruelty. I think she genuinely believes she's saving you both from more hurt. That doesn't make it better. No, Danny agreed. But maybe it makes it more understandable. Maya came out of the shower, hair wrapped in a towel. Saw us sitting there. Paused. Then said quietly, "You told him." Danny nodded. I thought he deserved to know. Maya didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just said, "Okay," and walked into the bedroom. Closed the door behind her. I sat with Danny in silence for a while. Then she stood. She's trying, she said. Even if it doesn't look like it. I know, I said. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. That night, Maya came out of the bedroom with her duffel bag. Again. Same one. Same slow packing. I'm not going to the residency, she said. Not yet. I looked up, surprised. I thought you. I still might. But not until we talk. We've been talking. No. We've been circling. She sat across from me on the rug. Pulled her knees to her chest. I don't know how to be a partner right now, she said. I don't even know if I know how to be a person. I nodded. That's okay. No, it's not, she said. But I appreciate you saying it anyway. A pause. Do you want me to stay? She asked. And for the first time, I didn't say yes immediately. Not because I didn't want her. But because I wasn't sure what staying meant anymore. So I said, I want us to figure out if staying is still the same thing as loving. She looked down. Then nodded. And whispered, me too. We didn't speak much after that. She went to bed first. I stayed in the living room, the TV playing something I wasn't watching, the volume low enough to pretend I didn't want silence, but not loud enough to make me feel less alone. When I finally came in, she was already curled toward the wall. Not asleep, I could tell by her breathing. I lay down beside her. Didn't reach for her. She didn't reach back. We just lay there. Together but not touching. Staying, technically. But is it still staying when you're both somewhere else? The next morning, I made coffee. 2 mugs. Like always. Set hers down gently on the nightstand without a word. She sat up slowly, bleary-eyed and quiet. She said, thanks, and sipped it without looking at me. I said, we should talk later. She nodded. Then got up, showered, got dressed, and left for work without asking if I wanted to walk with her like she used to. The rest of the day passed in slow, dull shades. I worked, answered emails, avoided Joe's texts. I couldn't tell if I was grieving or just exhausted. I guess the difference is, grief is about what's gone, and exhaustion is about what's still here but doesn't fit anymore. I wasn't sure which one this was. Maybe both. She came home a little after 6. I was already cooking, her favorite this time. I'd looked it up, triple-checked the spices. Got the brand of sauce she always says tastes like comfort. She paused in the doorway. Smelled the air. Didn't smile. You remembered. I nodded. I wanted to. We ate at the table, not the couch. Like we used to. Halfway through, she said, I talked to my therapist today. I'm glad. She looked up. I told her I'm not sure when I started mistaking not fighting for being okay. I swallowed. I think I did too. She set her fork down. We've been avoiding so much, haven't we? Yeah. And pretending it's fine because neither of us throws plates. We laughed, a little. But it wasn't joy. Just recognition. Then she said. It's not the Tinder. Or the jokes. Or the silence. I know. It's that I feel like I've become small in this space, and I don't know how to be full-sized again without knocking something over. I closed my eyes. I want you to be full-sized. Even if it's loud. Even if it's messy. She looked at me. Do you really? I don't know. But I want to. And that felt like the most honest thing I'd said in weeks. After dinner, we didn't clean up right away. Just sat there. Letting the words breathe. Then she asked, what would it look like for us to stop trying so hard to protect each other from discomfort? I thought about that. Then said. Probably a lot of crying. And uncomfortable silences. And overthinking. So, like now? We both smiled. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. We ended up on the couch, legs tangled, a blanket over us. Not because everything was fixed. But because we weren't pretending it was anymore. We watched a show without really watching it. At one point, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, do you think we've just been trying to win at not breaking up? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, maybe. But I think real love is less about not breaking up and more about learning how to fall apart without making the other person pay for it. She exhaled. That sounds hard. Yeah. It is. But we stayed on the couch. And that mattered. Later, as we got into bed, she turned to me. Do you think we'll make it? I looked at her. Really looked. At the person I'd laughed with. Cried next to. Hurt unintentionally. Held anyway. And I said. I don't know. But for the first time in a long time, I think we're finally telling the truth. She reached for my hand. I let her hold it. We didn't kiss. We didn't say I love you. We didn't promise forever. But we were honest. And sometimes, that's the most loving thing we can do. Before we fell asleep, I whispered, thank you for not walking away before we said what needed to be said. She squeezed my hand. I was waiting for you to say it too. And in that space, between knowing and not knowing, between staying and leaving, between the joke and the ache, we found something like peace. Not perfect. But real. And maybe that's enough. For now.